Hello, my name's Professor Kevin Hardy, and today in this presentation we're going to look at adjusting the dose of insulin for people who have type 2 diabetes and are taking a once daily insulin, usually at bedtime, in combination with tablets. All people with type 2 diabetes, in fact all people with diabetes and in fact all people should follow a healthy diet and healthy living. And in the context of type 2 diabetes, some people, in addition to the healthy diet and healthy living measures, will also need one or more of the following treatments. Diabetes tablets, so-called oral hypoglycemics, or OHAs as they're sometimes abbreviated to. They may need GLP treatment, which is an injection like insulin, but it's not insulin, or they might need insulin, or quite often a combination. There are many different ways to use insulin in type 2 diabetes, including a once daily long-acting insulin with diabetes tablets, which is what we're going to talk about today. Some people will use a twice daily mixed insulin. Some people with type 2 diabetes will be on a once daily long-acting insulin with a further injection of insulin, typically before the evening meal. Some people will be on a once daily long-acting insulin with injections of fast-acting insulin before each meal. Today, however, in this presentation, we're going to concentrate on daily long-acting insulin plus tablets in the treatment of type 2 diabetes. As I've already indicated, the long-acting insulin is typically taken at bedtime. Tablets are taken during the day. The timing varies depending on which tablet is being used. For example, Insuman basal insulin, which is a long-acting insulin taken at bedtime, with metformin taken with meals. Now, when we're using this so-called insulin tablet combination therapy, it's really important that we get the insulin dose right. How do we do that? The answer is we use blood sugar readings to guide the insulin dose. The aim is to get most of the pre-breakfast sugar tests mostly between 5 and 7. And the insulin dose is adjusted to achieve this. Let's take an example. Joan takes metformin, 500 milligrams with each meal. That's 500 milligrams with breakfast, with lunch and with her tea. And she takes 24 units of Insuman basal at bedtime. And if we look at Joan's blood sugars recorded in her diary, these are her pre-breakfast sugars, where her target range is between 5 and 7. And we see that all of the readings are high. So Joan's bedtime Insuman basal dose needs to go up. She needs more insulin to bring those sugars down. So Joan was on 24 units of Insuman basal insulin, so she increases it from 24 units to 28 units, and then she continues to monitor her sugars. 1 week later, Joan's still taking her metformin, 500 milligrams with each meal, but now she's taking 28 units of Insuman basal at bedtime. And if we look at her pre-breakfast sugars, we find that they're better. They're not in range, they're still too high, but they're better than they were. So Joan's increase in her Insuman basal has improved the sugars, but she needs to increase the insulin again. So this time, Joan increases her Insuman basal, her bedtime long-acting insulin, from 28 units to 32 units. And then she monitors for another week. So now 2 weeks after she started the insulin dose adjustments, tablets are the same, but Joan's now using 32 units of Insuman basal at bedtime. And when we look at her sugars, we find they are, again, significantly better than they were a week ago, but still not quite in range. Most of the readings are still higher than her target of between 5 and 7. So Joan further increases her bedtime long-acting insulin, her Insuman basal, from 32 units to 36 units and then monitors for another week. So it's now 3 weeks since Joan started to make changes to her insulin. Metformin's the same, but she's now on 36 units of insulin basal at bedtime. And when we look at Joan's diary, look at her pre-breakfast sugars, we find that they are now all in range. So Joan's bedtime insulin basal insulin is now right at 36 units. What we do then is nothing. She stays on that dose of insulin, stays on the metformin, and after about 3 months, her GP will recheck her HbA1c to make sure that those changes have resulted in her overall blood sugar test, her HbA1c, coming within target. So it's now 3 months later. Joan's on metformin, 500 milligrams with each meal, and 36 units of insulin basal insulin at bedtime, and her HbA1c is now less than 58, and all is well and good, and Joan will just continue on her treatment. If, on the other hand, at this 3-month point, Joan's HbA1c is still raised, then we'd look into her readings over the rest of the day. And that's what we're doing here. So it's 3 months plus. Joan's GP HbA1c was 71, despite her pre-breakfast sugars all being in range. And what we see when we look at the sugars before lunch, before tea and before bed is they're fine before breakfast, but then over the day they rise. And most of her readings before lunch, tea and bed are too high. What this tells us is that the insulin-tablet combination therapy that Joan was on is no longer a suitable regimen, a suitable combination of treatment for her. And what we need to do at that point would be to change the regimen to something else, perhaps a twice-daily mix. In summary then, insulin-tablet combination treatment is often used in the treatment of type 2 diabetes. The insulin is given at bedtime, and the dose is adjusted to get pre-breakfast sugars mostly between 5 and 7. The plan works for lots of people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And if it doesn't, there's maybe a need to switch to a different insulin regimen, such as a twice daily insulin mix.